Welcome back to the Unbiased Opinion, where everyone's opinion is biased except ours. I'm Colin,
I'm Craig.
And I'm Venom.
and we're taking a giant break from X-Men. We finally finished that, so we're going to focus on.
Finish it. We didn't forget any
Well,
mutants.
shut up. We're going to be focusing on the Sony superhero movies, I guess you can say. Sony has been infamous. They have been terrible, most of their superhero movies. And we are brought Venom, which came out in 2018. And everybody had the question when this movie was announced, how can you have a Venom movie without Spider-Man? And this movie proved everyone's concerns to be justified because it is not good. Dana, what did you think of a Venom?
I thought it was okay. Not terrible, but it's watchable.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the dialogue is a bit cringy, but overall it's pretty forgettable. Like I'm not gonna sit here and like hate on the movie and say it's like a complete piece of trash, but it's not good, but it's not bad. It's watchable.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely not the worst superhero movie out there, and I have. Oh, well, we could say this with full confidence because we talked about some of the Sony hits that they had recently with superhero movies. It's not the worst Sony one, so that's not really a compliment, but there's that. Craig, what do you think?
It's not good, but it's not the worst thing I've seen.
So this movie got eviscerated by the critics. It holds a 30% on Rotten Tomatoes, a 35% on Metacritic, but it has a 6.6 out of 10 on IMDb, which is actually pretty good for user reviews. I thought it'd be a lot worse. So I guess some more background info. I actually really liked Venom from the comics. I've always liked him. I'd always play him in Marvel to Alliance 1 and 2. And I did not see this movie when it came out because I really could care less about having a Venom movie without Spider-Man.
Well,
And
that's how his whole character was introduced. That he was obviously he gets the symbiote from Spider-Man. His whole mission is revenge, trying to ruin Spider-Man and Peter Parker's life. So his whole origin is just eviscerated.
well, they have the origin where the symbiotes are on the spaceship, and they said astronaut Jameson, I believe, in the beginning. So that's a nod to J. Jonah Jameson's son being the astronaut.
My son, the astronaut.
And other than that, the biggest problem this movie faces, and this is a trend for all the other Venom movies, is that Venom's villains are the same thing. They're just like him, and it makes it uninteresting because at points they're just these like black blobs running around hitting each other at night, mind you, not even
Well,
during
this
the
is a
day.
slightly different shade of black.
Well, this one was more like dark blue, I guess you could say, or grayish.
Yeah, I was
He's
gonna
like a
say it looks
gray
more like
versus
a gray,
black.
like a steel color.
Yeah, whatever. But he looks almost
Blue
identical
steel.
to Venom. And the thing also, without Spider-Man, Venom just looks like a black blob with big eyes and teeth. Because Venom's iconic Spider-Man and insignia is nowhere to be found because, again, there's no Spider-Man.
Yeah, and well, especially too with the whole appeal to Venom not only being, just vicious and stuff like that towards Spider-Man, but the thing with him was why he was such a threat is not only was he physically stronger than Spider-Man and he had the vendetta against him, but Spider-Man, the unique thing with Venom is Spider-Man could not detect him with his spider sense. So that's what really made him a threat to him. So he was always a unique Spider-Man villain, especially yeah, I like the symbiote in contrast to Spider-Man, but unless you wanted to dive into the lore, like introducing Null, the symbiote god. But other than that, just he's just a more like he's kind of like Spider-Man let loose, if you will.
Yeah, and again, I just think they neuter Venom, so there's nothing really interesting about him. Like, oh, he's a
Yeah,
reporter who got too close to the source and lost his job. Like, okay.
I was surprised, Craig, that you didn't like this more because he was an investigative reporter.
Well, I mean, if you ask me, he had what was coming, but
Yeah, his boss told him specifically to do one thing and he ignores it.
but my whole thing with these journalists in movies that they're always acting like they're some superhero. Like, oh, I want to be the next guy who breaks Watergate. Most of these reporters are, in real life are terrible people, so I don't know why you want to be like them. Movies and real life reporters are two very different things, but that's why
Well,
it's fiction, right?
like the comic storyline for Eddie.
Is this a
Like
Is that
rhetorical
what?
rhetorical?
question you're
Or...
asking us?
No, I'm asking you. Like what went wrong with him that he
I know,
and
like, I think Spider-Man did something to him, like he caught a bad guy or made him look bad, something like that, right?
it was the Spider-Man storyline, the Sin Eater, where the guy that Eddie um got to like confess or whatever was apparently known as like a notorious confessor. The guy would just lie and confess to crimes apparently. And Spider-Man caught the real one. So he so then he had a vendetta against Spider-Man, and I think he got the name Venom. It wasn't the symbiote's name. It was um, because because he became disgraced after that, so he had to keep like doing he would do like journalism and stuff for like all these like venomous tabloids. So that's how they got the name. It wasn't like the symbiote was named because actually in the comics the symbiote was very attached to Spider-Man emotionally. That's why it wanted to use Brock's hate against him. But the church scene from Spider-Man 3 is actually um that actually is in like the comics where Eddie goes to like the church and stuff to find solace and stuff. Um,
Is it also included in the comics where he begs God to kill Peter Parker, who at that very point he
I,
thinks he's just some random photographer?
I don't know that part. You could just kill. He's like asking him like a child, like asking a simple favor, like God, can you just not make it rain? No, can you take this man
He
out?
skipped all the steps and went straight to the source to ask like Peter Parker to be gone. You gotta admire the guy's hate. But I was gonna say, unironically, Spider-Man 3 handled Venom a lot better. And that's not only because of Spider-Man being in the movie, but also it's just like, I guess you could say that Eddie Brock is way more comic accurate than this lunatic.
That too, and because again, I think Venom is a villain at the end of the day. He may be Kabuka says an anti-villain now, but he's really a villain, and his whole mission is to ruin Spider-Man's life. So having him be this down on his luck
It's
reporter, it
it's
just feels wrong.
it's because I think the anti-hero thing is more because like him and Spider-Man obviously had
Well,
to
they
team
just
up in
team
the
up for
comics.
Carnage.
You had to take on Carnage. I'm sure Venom. There were times when it was like there was such a serious threat he helped out.
But
Like he's like, I'm a
yeah,
bad guy, but I'm
generally he
not the
doesn't like
bad guy.
Spider-Man. He generally hates Spider-Man.
Yeah, it just like I said, it's neutered. Plus, I like the take that. So
Oh,
people often think of
Spectacular Spider-Man.
oh, that was a good show, but
I was going to mention real quick, Rick. I'm so sorry, but when Daniel was
hang on.
talking about the origin of Venom's name, I liked it better in the Spectacular Spider-Man, where he says we're poison to Peter Parker, we're Venom. I think that is so much better than him working for venomous tabloids. But continue, Craig.
Well, speaking of Spider-Man 3, that's people when they think of the black suit in Spider-Man, they think like it makes you more aggressive and that leads into Eddie being aggressive. It's really just it was made up for Spider-Man 3, but it's just that movie had that trilogy did things so well that people think they pulled it from the comics. They made up a good chunk of stuff, but it was done so much better than the comics that people accept that as canon now.
Yeah, like him being a wrestler, right? Because then he worked for TV in the comics or something.
Yeah, he was
He
like
was
a
like an
wrestler or
entertainer.
something. Yeah, and it was like really something petty. I could pull up the issue,
Well,
but
the thing was also, not to get too off topic, but he didn't even run into the gunman that killed Uncle Ben, right? Did he in the original comics?
I don't remember. I have it next to me actually, but
Because it was so much better in the movie that. Or you know what it was? Maybe it's kind of similar, but Uncle Ben doesn't say in the comics. Obviously, great power comes great responsibility. It's the editor Stan Lee who says at the end.
yeah, it was like at the end, like you see Starman crying. With great power comes great responsibility.
Poor guy. One thing I also wanted to mention too is that I don't like this interpretation of Venom because it seems like Venom is in total control and Eddie has no control over anything. And to my understanding of the comics, it was mostly Eddie. Like it's obviously symbiotic; it's in the name. They benefit each other. But Eddie was definitely more in control, it felt like, and the symbiote was just feeding him his addiction to like, to have his villainous desires, I guess you could say. It wasn't
Well,
like Venom controlling everything entirely.
well, yeah, it's like a passive
Influence. Influence is
boost.
the word.
Yeah, it's a passive boost in
Yeah.
video game terms.
So I did not like where Venom was just. Eddie is essentially the tag along to Venom's quest.
Well, yeah, it's Venom's quest because, like, what does Eddie really do in this movie? I mean, at the beginning, he, reads his fiance's lawyer files and gets himself fired. Like, he's trying to blame the Life Foundation for, I guess, maybe that's why he got
Uh,
fired, but he should have listened to
oh,
his
and he
boss.
oh, he did the throwaway. He did the line to the one doctor try to help him because I lost everything going after them. It's like, well, you also you took advantage of confidential information from your fiance that was not meant for you. Like, what did you think?
Yeah, sensitive information in a lawsuit, deposition, or whatever she said. Of course, she's going to get in trouble. And of course, you went against your boss's orders. Like, don't push this guy too hard. He's got a lot of money, got an army of lawyers.
And what does our boy Eddie do?
Yeah, so when he tries to act like, oh, they ruined my life. No, it's really your fault. He doesn't really learn anything throughout the movie. He just gets a superpower and still is an annoying journalist. Like, we need more of those.
I also it's like with this interpretation of Brock. I don't know how he was in the comics as much, but like, was he like this like kind of awkward in the
And
comics?
sweaty. He's always
Yeah,
profusely sweating the
he
whole
was wearing
movie. It
that
was
gray sweater the
disgusting.
whole time, and it was like damp.
Like
Like
he
even
was like he
his
was
face was like sweaty and greasy the whole time. When he gives this man a shower.
He honestly looked like one of the homeless people in San Francisco.
or he looked like he was battling a perpetual flu.
Yeah, he just. And I know, like, oh well, there was that part where he's like, "Oh, I have a parasite," and it's like, "Oh, haha, he looks sick," and it could be like they think it's like a stomach bug or whatever. But no, he just looks generally unwell. He looks like, yeah, he just ran a marathon and he puts on baggy clothes to sweat it off or something. I don't know. It looks weird.
Like he was training in a Rocky movie.
Like he's trying to make weight for his wrestling
Yeah.
match.
Well, and also too another issue like with like Venom, his motivation. This like all of a sudden he just decides to stay. He's like, "Oh, I was a loser on my world, like, but here we can be something more." It's like just all of a sudden he flip flops.
What would the world even look like?
I just picture something like Nickelodeon slime everywhere.
Oh God.
It's like the Great Link.
Yeah, yeah, Null looks like Dan Schneider.
Well, the thing also is that on their
Oh
symbiote
God.
homeworld, that is disgusting. They're all like that goo because they only look like that because they're bonding to a human host. So is the home world just like little slime running around?
It's like the Great Link. I know you've never seen Deep Space
I
Nine.
know. I was
No,
thinking the exact same thing, Craig.
I've never
I
seen
was like,
that.
this seems like they ripped off completely Deep Space Nine.
It's called just a real rundown. So the main villains of Deep Space Nine are these things called the Founders. They're liquid life forms that can turn into like solids, like temporarily change their shape. But when they're not, they're on their home planet. There's like one giant ocean of them, like they're liquid forms.
Yeah, they're all
Wow.
linked together.
Hence the name Great Link.
Obviously, Venom came out before Deep Space Nine, but I just
Well, I don't think that the planet did. I mean, that's what I'm wondering. Like he talks about their home world. Like you're a loser. What are you doing? Do you have
well,
like a
and
poor apartment in your
Yeah, do they
your
have a
slime
job?
form?
What do they do?
Well,
I,
they're saying they want to bring more to like eat the planet or something. I don't know.
I don't know.
They can't even survive on the
But
planet, so I don't
but
know how they're
but
supposed to
but
invade it.
but the thing is, like with the symbiote, even in the comics, it was introduced in
No, Secret
the
Wars.
Secret Wars. That's where Spider-Man got the black costume. And then they found out later after the Secret Wars, I think because Spider-Man went to like Reed Richards to like examine it, and and then they found out it was a living organism. So that's where they found out it was a sim. But they had like no background on it. It was just was there.
Well, part of it too is I think they changed the costume just for a shakeup, and then I don't think it was popular, so I think that's why they said it was an alien. What I remember,
Yeah.
because people like the red, white, and blue.
It's just crazy that people would get so angry over a visual costume in a comic book.
I mean, have you seen what people do? Remember the reaction? Well, granted, I think it was warranted, but like the reaction to Ugly Sonic.
Well, that's different, I feel like. That just looked like an abomination.
Well, true, like I said, it was very ugly. Haunts
I
everyone's
guess,
nightmares.
Yeah, that
I
is
guess for
nightmare fuel.
yeah.
So I'm just looking at it. Venom is from 1988, and the costume originally debuted in 1984. So Venom is not that old at all in terms of like being a
Well,
villain. He's pretty recent.
I know. I like Craig. Maybe you would. Maybe you know the answer. Like, is Venom truly a popular character on his own? Like, obviously, someone who's he's quite known, quite notorious as a Spider-Man villain. Like, everyone knows Venom as a Spider-Man villain. But has he really gained that much of a following outside of Spider-Man?
I think for a time, because I know he had his own set of issues. Like after tormenting Spider-Man for a few years, I think he had his own run in the 90s. That's when they had all the millions of symbiote spin-offs. But I think his popularity has died down a bit.
Hmm.
Like I said, people like Venom, but I don't think people like Venom as a hero. I think like Venom more as a villain.
Yeah, he's a good foil to Spider-Man. But
Yeah, even people talk about certain greatest villains, right? They usually think of, Green Goblin, Doc Ock, and they throw Venom in there. I don't think Venom's as impactful as the other two, but still, he's up there for Spider-Man's best villains.
yeah, I could say the Sinister Six, like that cast plus Venom.
Well, they talk about like the big three, the Spider or Doc Ock, Green Goblin, and Venom.
I honestly did not know that Venom had his own issue, like a series of his own standalone stuff.
Well, I know they in recent years they had he was connected in it was the King in Black story with Null, but that had more to do with Null coming to invade the Earth with to turn them into like a symbiote world than it was just like Venom.
Well, I know there's other stuff too. Like they had anti-Venom for a bit. I think Flash Thompson had the Venom symbiote for a while. I think he was fighting with the Guardians of the Galaxy,
What?
Guardians at one point in space. Like this is
Well, I
getting
know,
weird.
isn't Anti-Venom technically Eddie Brock because then at some point Matt Gargan is Venom. Or
Yeah.
he might still be Venom. I have no idea.
Well, I think in Marvel Ultimate Alliance too. I think
Yeah,
that was
he
Matt
was.
Gargan,
Yeah, it
not
was.
Eddie Brock.
Why'd they make the Scorpion Venom? That's just stupid.
Because I think Eddie lost the symbiote, then he got cancer, which I always think is weird introducing it in comics.
Well,
Like,
like Captain Marvel, where he just dies from cancer.
well, I was thinking more of Thor: Love and Thunder, where
Oh,
like they're like, this is funny, guys, and then Jane
well, no, that
Foster.
movie was just a farce. That movie shouldn't even be recognized as a movie. It's a parody.
Oh, there's Jane Foster in the hospital room, like, guys, I'm dying. This is so sad.
She's like, "Oh yeah, I only have stage 4." Oh no, no, someone said you have stage 4, and she's like, "Yeah, but out of how many stages?" And they're like, "4." Like nothing's funny about that. You're dying.
I just think it's a weird mix because it's something so serious and something so tragic, and then comic books supposed to be, lighter, tackling more abstract ideas. Like cancer's too personal, too real for a comic book movie.
Especially if you're gonna have the intention of making everything a comedy in that comic book movie.
Oh, that makes it 10 times worse.
So going back to Venom with the movie, I
We
think.
barely talked about the movie.
Well, we're also talking more about like Venom as a character and the differences between you know the movie adaptation and who he really is in the comics. Because again, it's just how can you do a Venom movie without Spider-Man? Because all the villains are going to be like him, and that is uninteresting. It's boring. And maybe someone can say, "Oh, well, yeah, but one of them is stronger than Venom." Well, it's like, well, he still looks the same.
He's a different color, he's a different shade.
I don't know. Venom was doing pretty okay in the fight against Riot.
So, okay, let me ask you this: is Riot a real comic book character?
Yeah.
Okay, he
Yeah,
is.
but he's like, I think he was introduced like in the early 2000s, so he's a relatively new character.
I mean, there's so many symbiotes, but I know obviously the biggest popular spinoff after Venom is Carnage, but after that, that's when you lose me. It's like
It's
Toxin,
Toxin.
Shriek. Oh, like all right,
Yeah, yeah.
Riot.
Yeah, Toxin, Carnage, and Venom are probably your big three for the symbiotes, if you want to say the big three.
Let's keep
But
it at two.
Yeah, it's really the big two. Everyone knows Carnage.
yeah, but I only ever see, but I only ever knew the more about Toxin alongside Carnage and Venom because like when we would get those like Marvel handbooks, Toxin was always like one of the characters they mentioned. Like he'd be one, it'd have a very small insert, but he was in there. So I was like, oh, okay. Or like the Spider-Man villains or like characters, he would be included. So, but like I never read up on like the other like symbiotes.
Because
Well,
at
they're
some
all too
point,
similar.
yeah,
Yeah,
for
the only
reasons
catch,
though.
like you said, the only catch is that the offspring is stronger than the parent.
But at some point, it's like who cares? It's still the same kind of creature.
They look similar. They have generally the same powers.
I think the symbiotes are cool. You just don't need millions of them. Like it's Venom is a cool character. I like him as a villain for Spider-Man because of the threat he poses to him and like his abilities and stuff like that. But I don't think you need to keep going down the line.
Well,
Well,
they
I think it's just an issue of comic books in general. I mean, they tend to run their course. There's like a million. I know we're stick to Marvel, but there's how many different Iron Mans have there been? How many different, there's different Thors running around. There's different Captain Americas running around. There's different symbiotes running around. Like
they're
every
unintentionally
character has a
making
spin-off.
Venom irrelevant with the more symbiotes they trot out there in the comics.
Well, I don't think it's just a Venom thing. I think it's a comic issue at large. Like how many different Spider-Man have running
Yeah,
around? The
that's
Spider
true.
family.
Yeah.
Did you know that there's something
Well,
called a she Venom? I thought that was just like a weird thing in the movie.
The Bride of Venom.
Yeah, she's actually from the comics. I had no idea. Because when she started kissing him, I was like, ugh, that's.
Yeah, this is
Is Venom
creepy.
enjoying that? Or is she enjoying that?
I think Venom enjoyed
Questions.
that.
she said it was his idea.
Oh. So how did she not die then? Is she also a perfect match for the symbiote? Or did Venom actively choose not to eat her organs when he took her?
I'm
Because all
gonna
the other
assume he was
Venoms
being
were killing
malevolent.
their hosts.
Well, they never like perfectly. Not, I don't want to say perfectly. They never fully explained it. Like they would just say they're not a good match, but like what about them doesn't make them a good match? Or, like what makes them a good host?
They didn't explain that, but I just assumed that maybe they weren't being fed. That's why they weren't a good host. You gotta feed your animals, otherwise they die. That makes you at least a decent pet owner.
That's what I was thinking, but it just was never fully elaborated because I guess it was implied that like when Venom at the end said like, oh, you better get me food or else your liver's looking tasty. Like I guess because they'll just eat the insides of the host and then move on, but then they eventually die, which is counterintuitive.
Why would
Because
you
if it,
threaten to eat his organs
because
if
and
he
that
would
was the
die?
thing that like because Venom, it was also established with Venom like and Eddie that he didn't want to leave Eddie. Like when they got rid of him in the hospital, like he didn't want to leave Eddie because he was a good match for him. But they didn't explain what makes him a good match. Was it his depression?
Was he that he's a loser?
And the funny Venom was like, I sold out my fiance too to try to further my career.
Oh man.
So that's the thing. I mean, speaking of his fiance, I understand what Eddie Brock did was kind of dumb, but I mean, dumping him so quickly over, I guess he got you fired, but like dumping him so quickly feels kind of cruel. Because they show the beginning where they're like, oh, we're this happy couple, we're getting along, blah, blah, blah.
Getting
Eddie doesn't,
along, they're gonna get married.
yeah. And next thing you know, oh, Eddie got me fired. All right, see ya. I moved on already. Found the new guy.
See a chump.
Like she moved, like the guy moved in 6 months later. I mean, like, geez, like she's a mercenary.
He was a doctor, Craig.
I mean, yeah, better than beats the deadbeat journalist, but still, I'm just saying,
Beats
kind of
the sweaty
heartless.
deadbeat journalist.
Who hangs out with homeless people.
Are we sure Eddie wasn't homeless himself? Like I know he had an apartment and everything, but he just
The
looked like
whole the whole
he
movie
was
was a
straight off the
hallucination.
streets.
Like he didn't break into uh, with the Life Foundation. He was brought in as like a volunteer. They were constantly experimenting on him doing. The whole thing was a hallucination. He thinks he's some hero, but he's really just like fighting other homeless
He
people in the
got,
alley.
he got like a bad dose of heroin and just tripped on.
A little bit of fentanyl.
So I'm just doing some more reading, and it says the film is primarily based on the Venom Lethal Protector miniseries from '93 and the Planet of the Symbiote story arc from 1995.
Which is a sequel to Spider-Man stories.
Well, yeah, that's true. Let's see. Yeah, that's really it.
What did you think of the design or his costume?
I didn't like it. I think I mentioned earlier. He just looks like a giant black blob with bright, like big eyes and a weird tongue. Because he there's no Spider-Man connection, so he can't have the symbol on his chest and back.
Mm.
That's like mostly part of Venom's identity, and I've seen so many T-shirts.
Well,
I
it's
had one as a kid of the Venom symbol. It's like
well,
iconic with the character. It's synonymous.
well, what's funny is like he has like the webs and stuff, and he only got that because the symbiote adapted it from being Parker being his previous host. Like he only got those powers, like some of those powers and stuff from being bonded with Parker.
Oh yeah, obviously.
Also, I'm just gonna say it. Venom and Spider-Man 3 look better.
Yeah.
Because I know he's not maybe as bulky, but I feel like at least with a practical suit, it looks better. I mean, this is like a CGI, like it's gross looking. Like, I don't know. I always feel like skeeved out with Spider-Man 3. At least you can see there's a practical suit with
Excuse me.
obviously CGI with like, some of the tendrils, but I think it just looked better in Spider-Man 3, which, you ever want to be outdone by a movie you made 10 years before you, but here we are.
Yeah, I thought obviously he wasn't as large as like you said, but I thought Venom and Spider-Man 3 looked fine. He looked okay.
So it definitely looked more like Carnage, but still, I just like at least the suit was real. It didn't feel like as gross and like disgusting.
Well,
Yeah, there's something about it also where I just don't know how to describe it, but I think his design in Spider-Man 3, like you said, is a lot better than this movie design. Mainly because also it has has the symbol on it too, and I just don't know. I just feel like I like this one better because I'm looking on pictures on the internet of just the Venom design from this movie, and it just looks so weird because he looks naked essentially. What are you gonna say, Daniel?
I was gonna say because in the comics, like he wasn't like the symbiotes. The Carnage, you could see it more in. Like the symbiotes had more of that kind of like fluid, like slimy motion. Because in the comics, Venom looked more like solid. Like he just looked like someone took a bodybuilder and just painted him like black, and then they put the white on him. Like he never like I feel like in his classic looks and most of his appearances, he didn't look slimy. He just looked like just big. Like he just had like a very skin tight outfit on him.
Yeah,
Like
I mean,
obviously he has the big teeth and stuff.
and the tongue.
Yeah, and the tongue, but like he never looked like his like more like even like in show like in the cartoons and stuff, he never was like slimy or like gooey. It was just he was like solid, very muscular man.
Well, that's at least to me like with the the difference between the costumes. This one's
Yeah,
all CGI, just like a goopy mess. One's kind of solid. You can add CGI onto it to
yeah.
enhance it.
I do know what you mean though. In like Spider-Man 3, like where he just looked more solid. Like at least it didn't look as like
I don't know.
gooey.
I look at this one and it's gross.
The
I don't
only
like
part,
it.
because in Spider-Man 3, the only part that like looked any sort of like it moved any part really was his face.
Yeah, his face, like I don't think his eyes even moved really in Spider-Man 3. It was just his mouth. I could be wrong. I haven't seen Spider-Man 3 in a while.
I think it was his eyes and mouth, but that was about it. But the rest of his body just looked like it just looked like the Black Spider-Man.
But
Yeah,
also,
because
the symbol had the raised webbing.
Yeah.
this one has like it looks like milky kind of like strands on his suit because he's not fully black. His whole
Yeah, it's
body,
like veins.
yeah, there's like white milky veins. It looks so weird. Again, I guess the designers are like, well, we got to put something. He just can't be all black and have his eyes. We got to put something.
I'm just gonna say it. I don't like it.
I don't like it
I,
either, Craig.
I think people liked it more, but I think it's gross, and I don't like it.
Well, I think it also in part too is due to the fact that like '07 in the Spider-Man 3, like where they kind of, Venom obviously wasn't, he was forced into the movie. So, and also I feel like Spider-Man 3 doesn't get as well now. It's gotten better reception because of obviously Bully Maguire, but I don't know.
Well, I was gonna say this all comes back to the failure of the Amazing Spider-Man 2.
You mind
I
explaining?
forget. Well, I think there's another episode where I talked about how this movie bombing did so much damage to a lot of Hollywood. Because remember after Amazing Spider-Man 2, they had the setup for all the Sinister
Sinister
Six and all the
Six.
villains.
Who
There's
could
gonna make
forget that, Craig? Is in a basement.
there's gonna be Amazing Spider-Man 3 and 4 and all that stuff, but because that movie bombed, this never happened, so Sony scrambled. That's why they're making all their horrible villain spin-off movies. I mean, we had a Madame Web movie for crying out loud.
This is
It's just,
true.
Which was lovely. Which was lovely.
now we're getting a Craven.
Don't forget Morbin time.
Oh yeah. We get these winners. Now there's a
Do you think?
Craven movie.
Do you think? Do you think?
Are you
Do
gonna
you
do a
think that?
Doc Ock movie next?
I was just gonna say. Do you think they'll do a Doc Ock and
They'll
they'll
bring
quote all
back the
and
original actor.
they'll quote all of the stuff from Spider-Man 2,
But it'll be
like
like
they did?
it
Like
wouldn't make any sense. Like the power of the sun in the palm of my hands, and he's like looking
you
at a
mean
light
like
bulb or something.
you mean how they shamelessly did it in Spider-Man? Was it Far From Home? No Way
No way
Home.
home. Yeah, but at least I mean that was shameless, but it was in some sort of context. It wouldn't be like some random Doc Ock who just says that randomly in his own solo movie. At least that was the Doc Ock from Spider-Man 2.
But it still was just like, come on. His like
Oh yeah.
first, his like one of his first lines was that.
Well, they had the Norman saying like, "Well, I'm something of a scientist myself."
Like something. Are you or are you not a scientist?
Yeah, he's only saying that to Peter when he was just first introduced to him in Spider-Man 1.
Oh yeah, you're saying it to like a young kid. It's different
Yeah,
versus, in the
yeah.
context. Plus, it wasn't meant to be a meme. He was just speaking.
He was like trying to relate to him.
Yeah.
He wished he was his son. Despised you.
See, I think the best thing this movie is doing is making us talk about the better Spider-Man movies, namely the Raimi movies.
It always comes back to the Raimi movies.
Yeah, because I mean, like, there's nothing else really There's nothing memorable about this movie. Like, the villain is your, typical bad guy.
Mr. Bad Guy Scientist Man.
Evil business owner, bad guy.
I'm gonna take us to space. Like, I don't.
It was like, oh, he's experimenting on homeless people, or just killing homeless people.
I was surprised they killed that one doctor because I thought she'd be like a pivotal part later in the movie, and then he just bonds her with the symbiote and kills her. I was like, oh, all right.
He's not messing around, Daniel.
Yeah, he's killing people left and right, so you know he's a bad guy.
So, did you guys watch this on Disney Plus?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually did too. So I saw the end credits scene with terrible Woody Harrelson in a disgusting wig.
That wig
And
was
I don't mean Woody
jarring.
Harrelson is terrible. I'm just saying he was in a terrible wig. And then he
Yeah.
says, like, when I get out, there's gonna be some carnage. So I mean, I guess that'll be a conversation for next week. But real quick,
Yeah.
how does he get the name Carnage?
Oh, I don't remember.
I
I guess
don't know.
that'll be research for me next week.
Having information for Venom was enough of a stretch on his backstory.
Well, there's this movie. It's just that, like I said, it's not the worst thing I've seen. It's kind of bland and boring, and
It's
you often
honestly
wonder.
forgettable.
It's just
Yeah.
pointless.
Well, that's the other thing too. It's you're having these movies like this is the kind of movie that you should have after Spider-Man 3, not before you introduce Spider-Man. Venom's not a guy you carry a movie with, at least initially.
Yeah, like if you
Yeah.
introduce Spider-Man and him in one movie, and then he could have his own solo movie doing whatever it is he does.
Doing Venom things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably
like,
eating people's heads or
and honestly, it would have served better. Maybe you don't have him be a good guy. You could just have Venom. Honestly, if you just had him as like a mercenary, I would have been more interested. It's to serve to have him try to be the protagonist in a movie. It, I don't
Well,
know.
I have full confidence in that the MCU will handle Venom better than this, and it's almost like by default because there's going to be Spider-Man, unless Sony puts their foot down and says, "No, no, no, we're not going to give you Spider-Man."
My only concern for if the MCU with Venom
Well, Venom is
is
in the MCU technically.
well, my only concern though is that are they going to rewrite his origin so that he's an ex disgruntled Stark employee
Oh
that wants
yeah,
to take revenge against
Eddie
Tony
Brock
Stark?
was Tony Stark's personal reporter.
Actually, before he came to Spider-Man in Civil War, he went to Eddie Brock first.
Yeah. He said, "We're going to document this for General Ross." And then he fires him, I guess.
And then the Red Hulk gets the Venom, gets the symbiote.
That just sounds like a disaster.
You know, as we're talking, I feel like I'm having deja vu again.
Care to
I
explain?
feel like, sorry, I feel like this is the stuff because we did our Morbius review, we did our Madam Web review. I feel like we're saying basically some of these exact same stuff. These movies aren't. I think Morbius and Madam Web were worse, but along the same lines of why do these movies exist? Why are we making these spin-off movies for characters that don't need these movies? Why? Why? The big question, why? Why are you making this? I guess Venom did well. I'm assuming Venom 2 did well. We know Morbius and Madam Web bombed. Probably gonna have another bomb with, what's its name?
Craven.
Yeah, Craven.
Well, the thing is, I will say, in Sony's mind, it was a dumb idea to have a Venom movie. It was a dumb idea to have a Morbius, Madam Web, and Craven. But at least Venom was way more popular than all those guys. That's the only shred of, I don't even want to say credit. I'll just say, yeah, okay, to them that they did. Because at least Venom is popular, or at least he was popular. I don't know if he still is, like we said earlier. But it made no sense for like Madam Web and all those other ones.
Like, see, he's got his popularity, but it's as a Spider-Man villain. No one wants to see his heroic origin story. It's not the same.
Well, yeah. I'm not saying they should have done it. I'm just saying at least I could understand the reasoning behind it.
I completely blame the failure of The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
I blame Avi Arad. This scumbag is so obsessed with Venom. He ruined Spider-Man 3 by shoving him down Sam Raimi's throat.
He denied us Spider-Man 4.
He denied us Spider-Man 4. I hope he has a very bad night. I don't like him. He ruins everything he touches.
Who is this again?
Avi Arad.
Uh,
Infamously ruining Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, stop it with Venom. You loser. Stop it.
Nop it.
So let's
Uh,
talk about more positives. What you about to say, Craig?
Positives.
Because as you said earlier, like we're not really talking about the movie. It's just it's
I don't know what we could even talk about. I mean, nothing really changes for Eddie. Like he's gets ruined by his own actions, blames someone else, but kind of gets out okay because he gets the alien bonded to him. So I guess everything's okay in the end.
what kind of message does that send to the kids? You can mess up as much as you want. You can blame everybody, but everything will be okay if you get bonded with an alien parasite.
I mean, that's really what they're saying. I forget when this came out. Was it rated
PG-13.
PG-13?
Yeah.
Okay.
They all are. They all are rated PG-13. I think Craven is the only Sony one that's going to be rated R.
Remember, I think I heard an F-bomb, and I'm pretty sure people were probably clapping like seals.
Yeah, but you know, in PG-13 movies, you're allowed like one or two. At least one you're allowed.
I know everyone's like, "Oh my God, when are they gonna drop it?"
He dropped it!
Because I'm
So,
sure people
oh,
were
yeah, you
pushing
go, Craig.
for a rated R release.
They probably were, but it would suffer financially, especially with superhero movies. That's like your big money makers. Why would they even have it? Now, of course, there are exceptions. Uh, Deadpool is one of them. Joker
But let's
made
be
a
honest, with Deadpool and Wolverine or Deadpool movies, a lot of kids are in those theaters.
oh yeah, 100%. Like I said when I saw it in theaters, there were so many children near me. It was like an Arby's for Bryan Singer with all those kids there. So let's talk about some negatives.
I thought you wouldn't say his name.
Let's talk about some negatives. Aside from the we repeated countlessly, like why does this movie exist? Riot is a Venom clone, an interesting villain. Uh, no arc really for Eddie. He's a bland antagonist. What else did you guys not like?
I mean, that covered a lot of the big bullet points. Eddie was the main
mm.
character's terrible. The story's terrible. Why the movie exists is terrible.
Because I'm sure
Yeah,
maybe we'll get some comments as to like, oh, well, Venom's great because of X, Y, Z, and I'd be really curious to see what people like about it. So if any one
I,
of our fan are watching this and they're disgruntled with this review,
Our fan.
let us know what you like or don't like about the movie. I'll be very interested. Like I'm not being facetious. I'm genuinely curious or genuinely curious.
I mean, if I had to take a stab at it, I'm pretty sure people like the movie just because they like Venom. I don't think anyone really likes the movie that much. I think they're just happy to see Venom in a movie by himself.
I mean,
I've
I
tried to
guess
look at
I
what
can.
people like about it.
I guess I can understand that. Like if Venom's your favorite character, like I'm sure if they had a Cyclops solo movie, I would appreciate it for existing. Maybe it wouldn't be great, but I guess I could get behind that. But that's not good enough for sustain a whole movie.
Because that's the only thing I've really seen. It's like, oh, I'm just so happy to see Venom. It's like, okay, I mean, I guess, but
At
it's
what
not enough for,
cost?
yeah.
Again, it's not like, we're hitting a lot of negatives on it, but it's okay.
Now, have you guys? I guess this will be a segue to next week. Have you guys seen Venom 2 prior to this?
I never saw the first Venom.
Okay.
Uh,
Well, I'll just leave it at there then. Any final thoughts? Or is there anything else you guys want to talk about?
Well, I remember when this movie came out, I think it did well financially, right?
It did. It grossed, I believe,
Yeah,
700.
did very
No,
well.
$856 million it grossed on
Well,
a
I was
budget
remember
of
when it came out,
100
but
to
like
116.
I just had zero interest. Like I'm not watching a Venom movie by himself. Granted, I think the Joker movie came out a year later, which actually was good, but very
Well,
few movies can pull that off.
I think with the Joker one though, it wasn't really like the comic book Joker. It was a Joker iteration that heavily focused on mental illness.
Well, that was actually a very good movie, so it kind of makes up for the fact that it's not too much about the Joker. This is just not even a good movie. Like if it was a good movie starring Venom, I guess it's more acceptable.
Yeah, I agree.
So what would you think if taking out Spider-Man, um, what would you have done differently, I guess, to make it a more enjoyable or Venom to be a better character?
I wouldn't make Eddie Brock like some schizo. I think maybe the attempt of making him like a down on his luck was okay. My
Well,
main my main
it's more of like he
problem.
brought it upon
Well, yeah, I
himself.
wouldn't do that. I wouldn't make him bring it upon himself. I would try to dig deep into like the other Venom characters to see if there's one that isn't really a symbiote, or at least one that's a different color, so you can contrast with Venom. Because having one that's like a different shade, and they're and you see them like fighting far apart, you can't tell which one is which because they're identical looking.
Well, one's bigger.
Yeah, but when you're the shot is like a wide shot, you can't tell which one's fighting. You're like, who's who?
But the best, there's that fight scene where the symbiotes, because they're good, they got like mixed up in each other, and like I could even tell like, it was just the two, I guess, actors floating on some wires, like spinning around, or the camera was spinning around them. So yeah, guys, like the aliens are fighting around you. Just stand there and look confused.
So I would definitely try to see what other Venom characters there are, and maybe all the Venom characters are just symbiotes. I don't know. Maybe I would pull a Spider-Man villain, but not like one of the popular ones. Maybe I don't know, Shocker. Wouldn't he? Wouldn't
Shocker!
he be pretty lethal against Venom because of the vibrations?
He would be.
Yeah.
Maybe I would do him. He's not a popular Spider-Man villain.
See, I think if you were to do a Venom movie, the whole thing with Venom, how he started, right? He wanted revenge on Peter Parker. His movie could be like a revenge movie. He's trying to get his revenge, but slowly tearing his life apart. At the end, he realizes maybe this wasn't the best course of action for him.
Maybe when he's at the end, he's bonded with Venom. He's like, well, I have to learn from my consequences, and now I'm living it. He's living the consequences.
Oh yeah, because he wanted revenge, it went too far, ruined his life. Now he learned his lesson, and he's gonna try to be a lethal protector.
A Dark Knight.
Well, I think of, Spider-Man 3, where Peter's kind of going through the same thing. The symbiote ruins his life, and you kind of have to realize revenge isn't good for you, and then you move on.
Yeah, I agree. Basically, the polar opposite of what we actually got. I would change about everything.
So you could say it's our ideas are more basic, but at least as the skeleton of the movie, I mean, I think it's at least fit closer to the character and be more,
Well,
I don't know.
even if it is like you could say basic, I think it's a good start for a movie that introduces all these characters. Then you could go, I don't want to say crazy for the sequel, but you could definitely do more for the sequel.
So I know you've told us you've seen the sequel, right?
Yes, I have.
After seeing this version of Eddie Brock, I don't even understand why the whole sequel could come about. I guess there's another symbiote. Why Eddie would care? Why doesn't he just go to New York City or flee to like Seattle and start killing people? I'm just curious what the setup for the movie even is. Because I know he interviewed him at the end of the movie,
I'm
but
gonna be honest with you. I don't remember. I saw it like 2 to 3 years ago.
uh,
I don't remember. But I do remember that the sequel is like under 100 minutes. So that's good news for us.
thank you, Gollum.
97 minutes. That is amazing. That is great news. I love hearing that. So, do we have any other final thoughts, final complaints?
Bring in Spider-Man.
Don't they actually in the sequels?
It's in the
Doesn't he have a
end credit
cameo?
of the sequel. Spoiler. Not that anyone probably cares. Craig, how about you give me a final summary of this movie, Venom, from 2018?
Why does it exist?
Okay. Daniel, what's your final thought?
Why do I exist?
Well, we all know that. But yeah, I think not as we've been saying. Why does this movie exist? It's not unwatchable. It's not terrible. It's not good or great. It teeters that line of mediocrity.
Like I said, the worst thing about it is that it's boring.
Yeah, it's boring. It's surprisingly dull. It's not really fun. It's not
Yeah, like that.
memorable.
I wasn't like entertained with it. I thought this would be like a more fun movie.
I remember stuff from the sequel more than this one, if I'm being honest. And I watched this today. But with all that being said, this has been the Unbiased Opinion, where everyone's opinion is biased except ours. I'm Colin.
We are Craig.
Okay.
And yeah.
And we will see you next week for Venom
Yeah.
2.